5 sports. Let's get straight to men's basketball. These are the top seeds by the NCAA, including Jamie Pollard of Iowa State. Their AD is on this NCAA men's basketball selection committee. This is as of today, or as of, I guess, this weekend. The number 1 seeds are Alabama, Houston, Kansas, and Purdue. I think that's, there's 1 or 2 you could say could be a part of it, but that seems to make sense. Purdue has had the best start of everybody. Of course, Alabama's been good. The bad loss they had, to Oklahoma, but they've been salty. Houston back to number 1 overall in the country, and Kansas, well, they're kind of starting to smoke that motor a little bit.
Well, 3 of them are running away with their leagues. One of them is the defending national champ that's in the best basketball conference in the country. And is in first place now. They've got some great wins, especially here lately. Saturday was one of the strangest kind of games you're ever going to see, where they commit 1 turnover but make no shots in the first half. Baylor doesn't miss in the first half. Then Kansas is barely even stopped by Baylor, like gotten in their way in the second half. Yeah, it was a crazy, crazy game, but they certainly have announced their presence with authority the last week or so.
I mean, yeah, that makes sense to see those teams. I think UCLA's starting to get up there as well when you're looking at the rankings. Virginia, Arizona, all poking around there. But Purdue obviously slipping a little bit after last week. And, here we are 2 weeks to go in the regular season and getting down to the nitty-gritty. 4 games left for Baylor. And after that loss to Kansas, now really up against it as far as, having to basically hope that you win out and hope that somebody trips up Kansas a couple of times, which is unlikely, or that it works out in some way like that. But, Alabama's been basically all year long doing, their thing. And as you said, the Oklahoma loss is still kind of a weird deal that just sort of popped up during that Big 12 SEC challenge. But outside of that, for the most part, they've been very good, and obviously just lost their last one. But you can't complain too much about the Tide. Houston's been very good. It's amazing what Kelvin Sampson's done there. Kansas is, hitting at the right time, and Purdue just slipped, but they've been pretty good all year long as well. So yeah, that's a salty 4, and I think there's a couple other teams that are jostling for maybe a spot there, but not too much to complain about.
2 teams from the Big 12 are number 2 seeds. Both of them could still get to a number 1 seed. Not all 3, Kansas, Texas, or Baylor. Baylor, of course, has to make up for some lost ground. They're going to have to win at home next Saturday, this Saturday against Texas. And they're going to need, as Craig mentioned, someone to knock off Kansas. Kansas ends the season in Austin, but right now, both Kansas and Texas, 10-4, Baylor, 9-5. Those are the number 2 seeds. Craig reeled off every one of those teams. The number 3 seeds are Tennessee. I played golf yesterday with John Gifford. He's a big Vols fan. They've had a couple of guys out, but they're still very dynamic. They have the win against Texas. Virginia, who beat Baylor earlier. Iowa State, who beat Baylor earlier, had the loss to Kansas State, and a huge win for Jerome Tang and company. They host Baylor tomorrow in Manhattan. And the number 4 seeds, Indiana, Marquette, Gonzaga, and Xavier. And so those are, at least for now, all of this can change between now and the next time they have the release. 23 days until the NCAA tournament tips off in the first 4 on March the 14th. 23 days, and the tournament will begin. All right, so there's that. Now, in the Big 12, I mentioned the teams at the top, KU and Texas. KU tonight plays in Fort Worth against a team in TCU that can be up and down. Texas plays at home against Iowa State, an explosive team that did not close out in the win again in the loss to Kansas State in Manhattan. Oklahoma State tonight plays at West Virginia. Kansas State, Iowa State 8-6, TCU, Oklahoma State 7-7, Tech and West Virginia 4-10, and Tech now is one of those teams that, again, they need to finish almost flawlessly, but when they get into Kansas City, who knows? I don't think that they would be anywhere in the top 3 or 4 or 5 favorites because they're 4-10, but they're starting to play a little bit better. Oklahoma had an absolute chance to win down in Austin this weekend. They couldn't finish the deal. They did tie it up to force overtime. They are 3-11.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing about if they get in Kansas City, they're going to have to win the tournament
to
get in, which means which means that they've got to win 4 games because they're going to be one of those bottom seeds. And, they haven't won 4 games in a row, since the conference season started. So I doubt you're going to do it over 4 days if you're Tech. But, strange things happen.
I mean, they could do it by winning tomorrow night. That'd be 4 in a row.
Yeah.
That would, yeah. Because there was a time we started wondering, are they going to end up like 2-16 or 3-15?
I mean, just saying that they haven't done it, but they could do it tomorrow night. I mean, they've won 3 in a row, so they're at Oklahoma tomorrow, and I don't think that's a game that they can't possibly win. So yeah, I mean, they haven't done it yet, but they could very well do it tomorrow night. But to your point, Paul, they got to do more than that, right?
Yeah, they do it. They got to do it 4 days in a row. They don't get to do it over 2 weeks.
And they got to, whatever they got right now, they also have to continue sustain that. They still need to win some games. But then you're right. No matter what they do to close out the regular season with 4 games left, the best they could get to would be 8-10, which is pretty good.
Wow.
That's pretty good in the Big 12. That's if you get to that point, and you still might need to win the tournament.
If you get to 8-10 on an 8-game winning streak and then win 2 games in the tournament, and then you're on a 10-game winning streak, you'll be fine.
Yep.
And they can probably, look, the league's crazy. I mean, people have been streaky all year long. So if they close out like that,
Yeah, let's see what they do. Their next game is going to be at Oklahoma. That's a game based on kind of a schizophrenic team at Oklahoma. Also, now let's see, Paxton Tech making the NIT. I think that's a given. They would also be great for the NIT because if they host a game, even though it's not the NCAA, they'll end up with a really, really good crowd. Mike Bean, KU wins another Big 12 championship. With whatever Bill Self dialed up in that speech at halftime, whatever they did, and they changed some things up as well, that was impressive. I saw Paul Saturday afternoon at halftime. There was a get-together for Adam Batchelor, a huge Iowa State fan, and I was there just for a few seconds. But Baylor was up 13 at halftime, and I said, they're not going to shoot that well. There's no way they could match that 9 threes in the first half with Flagler and George and Cryer, and sure enough, they didn't even get close to that, and then Kansas started increasing the pressure. And give Jay Billis credit for this. During game day, he said the difference between Baylor and Kansas, Baylor's offense is better overall because of their guards, but KU's defense is much better than Baylor's, and we've seen Baylor struggle, and they gave up one after another point-blank layup or dunk in that opening minutes of the second half.
Kansas's worst games have been particularly Dwan Harris. If Dwan Harris scores more than 3 points, they're undefeated. So, the games that they've lost have been his worst games. When he plays even okay, then they're going to win a game, especially on offense. And he's a really good defensive player anyhow. Yes, Kansas defense is much better. I expected the 13-point lead to go away and it to be a tight game down the stretch, not to the point where Kansas could have legitimately, had they maybe been playing another team, put in the walk-ons in the last 2 minutes.
No, it was a destruction. They absolutely took Baylor's heart and soul. Baylor stayed in Kansas, as even Scott Drew told us last week. They have Kansas State on the road tomorrow. So, college